The top story on ABC News Breakfast. The focus of the flood emergency in New South Wales has turned to Forbes in the state's central west. Floodwaters have cut the town in half. Dozens of homes and businesses in the CBD have been inundated. The Lachlan River is expected to peak at around 10.6 metres later today.
About 1,000 people have been told to leave their homes, and emergency workers are frustrated that many are simply ignoring that order. The Mayor of Forbes says the community's been working hard to prepare for the flood.
We're totally surrounded in the CBD by water. This water behind me closes off all of our shops within the CBD, except a couple down one end that we are able to keep open. We have about a 5-day window when Wyangla starts to let water out and we know we're going to get a flood. So we've been evacuating people who are on that flood fringe with the predicted height of 10.65. The rural community has suffered a lot, not only with drought, but this is our second flood. We had one in 2010, and the farming community were the worst affected then. And of course now we have another flood going through their property. So it's going to be pretty tough on them in the coming months.
Phyllis Miller, the Mayor of Forbes, there speaking last night. For an update, the New South Wales SES spokeswoman Erin Pogmore joins us now from SES headquarters in Wollongong. Erin, good morning. What is the latest situation in Forbes this morning?
Good morning. We have seen that evacuation warning is still in place for that Forbes area, and the town has been cut in 3. We do have our SES volunteers on the ground in that area in those 3 separate locations so that they can respond to the community as required. And we are looking at a peak coming through this evening of about 10.65, so we'll be keeping a close eye on that one throughout the day.
Have you got a rough time this evening of when that peak may be reached?
At this point, there isn't a time frame other than this evening. That will depend on how much water is feeding in from those tributaries and also the overland flooding that is in that particular area.
How frustrated are authorities there on the ground that many people in Forbes and around Forbes seem to be ignoring that evacuation order?
With the evacuation orders, it's obviously they've been put in place for safety reasons, but we can also understand that it is quite devastating for people to be told that they do have to leave their properties. It can be quite a daunting experience to know that you have to leave and there is a possibility that your home will be flooded. So we are asking that people do bear with us. We are doing it for safety reasons and we are trying to inconvenience the community as little as possible.
If the floodwaters do reach that peak of 10.65, how serious will the flooding be in Forbes? How many houses, for instance, may go under?
At this point, it will depend as to, again, how much of that water does feed in from those other tributaries, but we can expect that we will see some inundations of properties within that Forbes area if we do reach that peak.
OK, let's turn now to Griffith. Erin, what's the latest situation there this morning?
In Griffith, again, we do have evacuation warnings in place for a number of properties in that particular area. Bilbangara is a place that's affected by by an evacuation order, and that one has had about 120 properties that have been inundated. We'll be looking at that throughout the day as to when we can go in and assess the damage on that one and make sure it is safe, and then we'll be getting those communities back into their properties as soon as possible.
And I suppose the problem you've got for Griffith and surrounding areas is that the floodwaters are hard to gauge because at this stage the water's going each and every way.
That's correct. With this one, it's not a riverine flood, so it's not coming from a catchment area as such. It's overland flooding that's coming from small tributaries and rainfall that's come across the area, and it's just moving across the land. We're looking at about an area about the size of 300 kilometres squared that is affected by this floodwater. It's quite shallow, but it is creating quite a bit of havoc in that particular area. And obviously with those properties that have been inundated, we are keeping an eye on exactly what the further impacts of it are going to be. Now
finally, Erin, let's go to Wagga. Wagga, the danger there has passed, but the floodwaters still in that town are fairly high.
That's correct. We still have evacuation warnings in place for a number of people in the North Wagga Wagga area and parts of Gumli Gumli. So again, we will be looking to see when we can get those people back into their communities and back into their homes, but we do have to make sure it is safe and that we don't have to re-evacuate them later as another inconvenience.
Erin Pogmore from the SES, thank you very much for the update this morning.
Thank you.